So, as always, we start the program with the leaderboard scores. This will be the first program after goal setting, so scores may not be much to talk about, but nevertheless, it's a good way to get the participants' attention. We quickly touch upon the agreements once again in terms of being punctual, listening, show of hands, respecting other people's right to talk, no telephones, and then, of course, having fun. Go back to a quick recap on what we did last week, talk about goals, goal setting, what were the SMART goals, what is the larger goal of human life, leading to the importance of values. So, again, this will be a more very quick interactive slide where we'll ask the students to call out what they remember from the last week's session and then set the stage for the current week's topic, which is on values. So, set it up by asking what do you value most, and jump straight into an activity, asking people to reflect on the pictures that comes in the next couple of slides. Now, those slides are not there in this presentation because those need to be added to suit the audience. So you could pick up some eminent personalities from Kenya, Africa, or the world stage and ask these questions as to what values are these people representing, how did these values come from, is it through birth or is it through their upbringing, through education, or is it through self-study, discipline, or through experience. So that becomes a very quick connect with the fact that they are what they are because they represent certain values. We can go into a game, a very simple game, which is it's like an origami activity using just A4 size pieces of paper. An old newspaper or magazine pages would do for this game. So give each of the participants similar sized papers and ask them to fold it into whatever sizes, shapes that they think of. So you could have people making flowers, some people making rockets, some people making some plane, boats, whatever. So the debrief is to say that it is the same piece of paper, but it can be folded into multiple shapes. And then ask them what does it mean in terms of the people that they are. So it will lead to the understanding that similar to the paper, they can be molded in different shapes, and that largely depends on the underlying values that drive that person. So that's a setup for values, how they mold the person's attitudes and actions and thoughts. Then pose this question on what are, it's like a reflection point. Ask the students to reflect on what are my biggest challenges today, and what do I see as the biggest challenges when I step out into the real corporate world, the work world, whatever world that they're moving out of college or school, and let them reflect on it for a couple of minutes. So they will come up on all the pressures that they have from peers to be seen as part of a group, getting into habits which are life-threatening or physically endangering or financially drained, like smoking, drinking, drugs, or falling into relationships that are not meaningful, but it's being forced upon you, and it could be something to do with a choice of boyfriend or girlfriend, and you don't want to be left out, not having anybody like that, copying in exams, and willing to sacrifice friendships and relationships in the course of chasing success. It's an interesting story on how individual values are shaped, or actually individual values shape the community values, which in turn define society values, and in turn the village, the town, city, state, and country. So how as an individual we help the shape the values of a country. So in a way, each country is a representation of the values of their citizens. So, for example, ask this question to the audience: what does Switzerland represent, or people immediately recollect when we use the word Switzerland or Swiss made? So, the answers will be watches, pharma, banks, chocolates. So, these are all and ask as to what do they represent? What are these products that we associate with? So, the answer that we expect is it is to do with quality, with precision, with trust, with ethics. Likewise, Japan. We ask them, okay, what is the values that Japan represents? So we talk about again miniaturization, quality, specifications, being very, very precise, punctual, respecting, character. It's about process, respect for people, so on and so forth. Then we can add a story about, this is a real story about General Electrics having placed an order from a Japanese supplier for electric. I think the Sanyo. For electronic parts, the order, the contract allowed for 6 units to be damaged in every 1,000 pieces that Sanyo will ship to General Electrics. So when the shipment arrived from Sanyo, they found that there was 1,000 pieces, plus there were another 6 pieces that were separately packed. And when they opened it up, they found that there was a small note saying that we normally do not manufacture any defective parts, but since your order specified there will be 6 defects in 1,000 orders, so we had to make it specially for you. That's the kind of quality consciousness that we're talking about, and that is what Japan represents in everybody's mind. The moment I say Japanese product, that's what it means. So let's continue. What are values? Right. Let's define it a little more in detail. So ask the students to call out what they think values are. So some answers will be guiding principle. It is something that is the worth. That's how you come to know what is the worth of something or someone. It could be something that people relate to in terms of money. So what is a pen, what's the value of a pen or cost of a pen? Or in terms of the qualities of a person, which is dictated by the education, their upbringing, attitudes, ways of thinking, behavior, actions of a person. Sometimes you could even look at value can be best measured when that is absent from that person or absent in one's life. So a value of a mother may not be felt when the mother is still around, but when she is no longer around is when you understand the true value of that relationship. So is that true of the father? So is it true of your wife? It's true of your husband, children, friends, companionship. All these, the absence of it also can add tremendous understanding of what these values are. So that's to do with what they bring to us. We are going to focus on our internal values, right? So that's a difference. Let's move on. Explore what your values are. So again, this is an activity. So it's a good activity. It challenges people to think. So here you have 2 choices to make this. One is there is a rich source of values in the next slide. It's a whole list of about 40-45 values. This is the slide. There are 6 buckets that hold these values. So there is one relating to self-development, one relating to lifestyle, one to continuity, social responsibility, relationship, and mastery. So self-development has a list of 7 or 8 values, lifestyle has similarly 7 or 8, and so on and so forth. So what we can ask is, especially if we don't have a PowerPoint facility, is without showing this slide or talking about this slide, use this as a reference but don't share it yet. Ask students to write what they think are the top 10 important values, and you can give some examples from your own experience. For example, in my case, I talk about the fact that when I was single, bachelor, lot of friends, at that time my value was more in adventure, challenge, creativity, maybe a little bit of prosperity, and so on and so forth. But today, after I'm married and children, and over the years, my values are, my most important values are moved from those to family, community, uh, more in terms of environment, integrity. Integrity is for me a permanent value. It has not changed over the years. But there are values which can change according to the phase of our life. So this becomes a very rich discussion for people to understand that there are permanent values which don't change, and there are some values which change according to the phase of life and the circumstances that we are in and the surroundings that we work in or are living in. The second option to this activity is just ask them to give them this list, put it on the PowerPoint or write it on the blackboard, and ask them to distinguish between what do they value most and what do they value least. It's very simple. Ask them to take those 40 odd values and say, in this, what is that they value most and what is that they value least. About 5 minutes is what we need for this activity. So this will give them clarity on to what are these things that they value, and for many a time it's very difficult for them to articulate. So it may be a good idea to use these words to help them and say, this is not exhaustive. There could be other words or values which they can add. It's up to them completely. So then we sort of connect this to our goal setting in the next slide. So how do we set our goals? For us to set goals, we need to have clear values. We need to know what our values are, because they are the ones that will define how we feel, how we think, and this is what we call as attitude. And those feelings and thinkings eventually express themselves in our behavior, which is taking action, and those actions will lead us to our goal or take us away from our goal. So it is about again recapping it, saying that what values in your most value, what are those values that are going to, what you listed earlier, are going to enable you to reach those goals, and what are those values which will take you away from those goals. So this is again an activity for them to reflect on. So this connects the goal setting module with the values module, and it's a good place to say that values are not necessarily only inherent. There are some, but there are some values which can be learned through conscious practice, conscious awareness, and imbibing those values, which are a continuous process, because these values are what help us determine how we feel, what we think, how we decide what we do, and how we take action. So all this is the value chain or the value process. Then again we go to another activity where we say, hey guys, let's understand something more about values. So I'm going to ask you to do something. Close your eyes and insist that everybody closes their eyes and say, raise your right hand, and together all of you point in the direction of where you think north is. So you'll get multiple, with the eyes closed, they will raise your hand first about 5-10 seconds, and then tell them you can open your eyes, but don't pull your hand down. Keep it in the same direction that you are pointing out when your eyes are closed. So when they open their eyes, you tell them, take a look around you. So they'll find that many of them have been pointing in different directions. In a classroom of 50, 60, 100, you'll have different hands in different directions. So ask them, okay, this is where you think north is, but where is the real north? And then you should know this in advance for the class, or you can check out very quickly from the person who's a resident there saying which is the north direction, and say, look, did it matter that you said north is in this direction or that direction? Because the true north is still where it is. Just because you pointed out in one direction does not make it not true. So this is exactly what true north principles are. These are principles which cannot be changed just because people define it or interpret it in different ways. These are the core values that guide us throughout our life. They do not mean different things for different people. So they are unchangeable, and it is only that what importance we attach to them can change, but not the values themselves. So, for example, honesty, respect for people, simplicity, integrity. All these are values are completely non-compromisable, non-negotiable. They cannot be redefined. They cannot be saying it is contextual. No, they are true north principles. So then if we say that this this is where we go back to those challenges that we talked about earlier, saying that you have problems in living your values. Are these the true north values, true north principles? Then there should be no challenge, right? Then there is no doubt in one's mind as to what I should be doing, what values are going to dictate my actions. So let's look at some stories. I want you all to come up with some couple of stories that you can think of. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Think about it and share a story where you've seen people stand by their values. No matter how hard it was, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how challenging it was, they stood by their values and they achieved what they achieved or lost everything because they stood for a particular value. Think of such stories and let's share it. Ask the students to share it. Give them a minute each. Take a couple of stories and then sum it up by asking this question: how can I become a strong person like the heroes of these stories? This is where you start asking them to apply the learnings of the day. Now, how do I know what do I truly value? How do I understand myself? What do I need to do to go deeper into myself? Because we generally live on the surface. We don't understand what is inside us. It is only experiences tells us, okay, in this particular experience, my value came forth. We don't explore values in isolation, independent of an experience. So here is an opportunity to do that, to understand yourself. And how is that? Meditate. All you need is to give yourself some time. And it's a daily practice where you go into yourself and you rediscover yourself. So once you do that, the more you connect with yourself, the more integrated you become with your inner self. You start living on the values that you choose, not by what others dictate on you. Keep observing those small things that you do, say, think, related to the values that you espouse. And observe the changes that slowly takes place in the way you behave, the way that you express yourself, the attitudes that you display. This is an exercise that you will do when you get out of this classroom. Final thinking time. Take this quote or take any other quote from the local celebrity, whatever seems to fit the audience right, and ask them, which other values I'm adopting in my life and can they make me truly happy? Think over this, guys. Write it in your diary and we meet again next time when we discuss time management and stress management. Adios. Goodbye. Thank you.